Welcome to our podcast. Today's episode is about continuing the conversation we began about enrollment. And today we really wanted to talk to you about what are some of the challenges that a coach might have or might be going through in that enrollment conversation. And whether you're new listening to this or you're okay, you're getting better, or maybe you're an expert enroller already, I think that you'll find value in today's episode for a lot of reasons. And today we're really going to talk about what gets in the way. So I'm here with Raju, my partner, and we're talking about enrollment. And I remember first few times you joined me on an enrollment call. I'm curious if you would just share, with our listeners, what were some of the thoughts that were going through your head when you first started participating on those calls?
Well, when we were speaking with prospect clients and the two of us were together, I was really dumbfounded. It's the only way I can put it, because I didn't know what to expect. And I mean, I kind of thought I was prepared to know what to expect, because when you're prospecting somebody, or they filled out some application to schedule this call with you, I've spent 40 years in business, so for me, there are other conversations. I've done a lot of training in my life, but this was a little different. So yeah, I think it was. I came with some trepidations, but about how we close this client, because that's what I'm used to doing in business, and I guess the words and the terminology was all a little bit funky. But as we know, this is a sales call in a way. But the idea is that even in a sale, the first connection that happens between the buyer and the seller is an emotional connection. So I think that was even more relevant here. So I think, I learned a lot from our first couple of calls.
Yes. And so if you had to give somebody advice that was just starting out as to how you might establish that emotional connection sooner rather than later on that call, what would be your advice?
I think you said this before. I just think that this is for me, it was about listening. Listening intently to what they're communicating. You're not going to just go over the application that they filled out, because that was my tendency to say, you rated yourself this or that on this particular attribute. It's not about that. It's about, that's already been expressed. Now you got to dig deeper and find when they're speaking or they're answering a question you create. So I think the first thing is framing the right questions. And the other part of that is really listening to those answers intently rather than be ready to ask the next question, because ultimately you want to connect with them at a heart level, emotional level.
Yeah, you're bringing up a great point. A lot of certification programs or even new coaches, have a script where they try to create a script for you to follow. And, what happens when you just follow that script?
Well, when you follow scripts, you become mechanical, right? So you're not really listening. You're mostly ready to ask the 3 questions or the 5 questions you might have on your list. Hey, if the client says that, or if they say that, maybe you could ask them this question. But no matter how much scripting you get and the questions you are programmed to receive or to speak out, frankly, that is nothing. It's never going to be the same 5 questions or the same 3 questions you're going to be able to ask those of your prospects, because ultimately it comes down to what is it that your coaching is about to begin with? And, you want to get to, is this candidate coachable, right? And if that's the objective, you're going to have to ask questions that are unique to that situation. I mean, you can start by the 3 to 5 or whatever scripted questions you've got. But frankly, I was using those in our calls. And I was like, okay, well, this doesn't mean anything, because I could ask some variation of that question, but then I'm just asking the question and I'm not really paying attention to how they're looking at, whether you're on camera now or in physical meeting, they're shifting in their language and their expressions changing. I mean, those are crucial things. But if you're focused on your questions and not on them, you're going to lose that.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So we started doing enrollment calls together probably a good 6 months ago now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if you could, put yourself in the now versus 6 months ago, what are some of the things that you've improved since?
Well, to use foul language here, I don't consider myself an asshole. But yeah, at times, when you're being a hard ass with your client prospect, or even a client, you want to call them on their BS, right? So I've learned that it's okay when someone's giving you just lip service and they're not ringing true to what they're saying. And again, this takes practice for you to pay attention.
What is okay? You said it's okay if they're giving you lip service.
No, it's not okay.
Yeah.
So it's not okay that giving you lip service, because it's okay that you're asking these questions, but you cannot get really good at it. I mean, ultimately, you got to really get good at it. I mean, I'm still learning every day. Everybody's always learning. This is a new art, really. There's an art to this. The science is those questions, the framed questions you might get in a certified coaching program or something like that. But truly, if when you're seeing that your prospect or your client is not really owning up to what they're saying, but they're just giving you that service, you gotta call on them and saying, hey, that's not what you really mean, right? So go back and repeat that, or find a way to get them to reframe what they're saying, right? So I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, because I think a lot of coaches, we just inherently want the other person in front of us to feel good and to feel better. But listen, some of the best coaches out there, that's not what drives them. What drives the best coaches out there are results. And it's about getting your client to get results. And sometimes that's going to require talking in a tone or in a manner that maybe you as the coach are not comfortable doing. But if you don't do it in that moment, how else is the person going to hear it?
Right. So we talk about providing support or an environment for the client to be felt supported, but support does not mean that you lose sight of their mission. If you're, in the case of an athlete, if you're trying to get them to be really going to the highest level or accelerate their growth in whatever walk of life that you're coaching, my God, you have to be tough, right? I mean,
I think you have to be willing to be tough. Yeah.
Well, you have to be willing to be tough. Yeah. So sometimes you may be supportive because, you got to give them a marker for achieving a milestone. Okay, well, then now the next level comes, and you may have to get tough for that. So you can celebrate small wins with them, but frankly, ultimately, your job as a coach is to help them really get to the highest level that they can. Ultimately, we're coaches because we're helping maximize the potential that the person that you're coaching, right? So because they could be whatever stage that they're at. You can start with them and where they are, but really your goal is to, otherwise they wouldn't engage you. They're there to get better. And that's a responsibility too for them. And if you don't get, or if you're not willing to get tough with them to put them where they are and then get them to the next level, I've had that situation in small breakout rooms where I just felt like, oh, are you okay?
Well, in the context of the enrollment conversation.
Yes.
Why is that important? This is the first conversation we're having with this client. But at that point, they've already filled out the application. They've already shared their deepest desires and their, challenges with us. So in that context, what would more coaches gain if they allowed themselves to actually be bold enough to say the thing that, needs to be said? Because I talk to a lot of our clients who are coaches, and a lot of them say they shied away from the opportunity, or they didn't they knew what they wanted to say, but they didn't say it because they didn't want to hurt their clients' feelings.
So I've been there. So you're thinking, if in one case, I think on one of the calls, this person started crying or had literally tears in their eyes, and I felt like asking, "Are you okay?" Right? Or I might even have asked that question. Well, that's not really. You're not as a coach prospecting a client. You're not responsible for how they feel. You just got to get depending on the situation, you really have to be bold enough to get them to the next level of saying, yes, after based on what I've just said about what I want to do, based on the application, you got to get them there.
And tears could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
Tears could be a release, which is very helpful, right?
That's right.
So I think, for me, I actually approach these conversations like, what if this person doesn't enroll with me and they never have another honest conversation with anybody else? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
So I take that with the utmost seriousness, that if I started this conversation with them and they started going down a path of discovery, I'm going to take it as far as they're allowing. Mm-hmm. And then whether or not they enroll, they get off the phone forever changed in some way.
Yes.
And for me, that's more important than me thinking about whether they think I'm nice or I was pleasant. These conversations are never going to be pleasant.
Yeah. So I learned that. I think that point is very, very important because you can come across as an ass, as I said earlier. I said that more than that. But you can't worry about that. Your point is that you are going to do them a disservice if they get off the call after having established with you that they want this to be their goal or that to be their goal, and then they say, "Sorry, I'm not joining because of all the reasons." If we hadn't paid for certain services that we bought or a product we bought because somebody sold us on them, I mean, my God, that would be a disservice to us if we didn't get to enjoy that product or the service in the
grow from it.
Or grow from it, because if you're a growth minded, you're obviously, if you're a coach, you're growth minded and you want to, as you were saying earlier, impact other people's lives because of the experiences you might have had that you want to share. Well, would it be terrible if they didn't get to talk with you and be with you for X number of weeks or whatever the program is? So what if they pay you? That's, we have this relationship, but I think this is closely tied to the money. Like, we all get caught up in this money conversation, and they go, "Oh, I have to sell and I have to enroll, but, maybe it's okay. They can't afford me," or...
Well, before we even go further into that, because I think that's a whole other episode on its own. I think that's coming because there's a whole episode coming on coaches honoring their worth.
Yep.
Because, if our work is about teaching our clients to honor their worth, then as coaches, we have to stand in that. We have to be that as well. We have to demonstrate that and role model what that looks like. And that means that we get to charge our worth.
Correct.
But before we get to that episode, talk a little bit about what some of our people listening to this, what are some of the emotions that you really, because it's really uncomfortable, to be in that conversation. Like, how did you finally overcome that uncomfortable feeling that allowed you to be able to show up and serve at the highest level on those enrollment calls?
Well, if we go back to the point about paying attention to all that's going on in that conversation, I mean, frankly, it was helpful that, some of the conversations we were together in. So you're paying attention to their expression and what you're feeling. Listen, it's a two-way conversation. You're qualifying them, whether you want them on your program or not to begin with. So it's a conversation to understand whether you belong in this container we're going to create, or a conversation, maybe it's a one-on-one coaching you want to do, whatever it may be. It's overcoming that is about, as I said earlier, I think it's more about knowing and believing being convinced that what you're going, or this client will really benefit from working with you. So if you don't hold on to that conviction, right, and whatever way you want to communicate that, because you don't want them to get off on the call without saying yes to you. And sometimes they just need a little push over the edge. And so being prepared that I'm pushing you, but really it's for you. I'm arguing for you, right?
I love that you brought that up, because in the previous episode, we talked about making sure you as the coach, that your energy is up and maximized before you get on these calls. It's because you have to fight for your client when they don't yet have the confidence to fight for themselves. Mm-hmm. Enrollment is about fighting for your client and making that stand for them, because chances are they're not able to do it on their own yet. And that's why somebody needs a coach. And sometimes we don't know what we need because we don't know what we don't know. Right. And so in that, by you making a stand for them in that moment, you are demonstrating the power of what it feels like to have a coach. And that's why you can't back down. You can't get into your own head and retreat. Right? So we literally have said to our clients, we're fighting for you right now because we know you're not strong enough to fight for yourself.
Otherwise, you would have done it by now.
For your dream. Otherwise, you would have done it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as we wrap this up, man, I could keep talking about this. But as we wrap up this episode, what's the one thing that you've learned about yourself as a result of having these enrollment calls? We've done so many now. What would be the thing that you didn't know about yourself, but now you know, having experienced these and having clients enroll, having some not enroll, whatever the outcomes may be? Whenever we're learning a new skill, we're learning not just the new skill, but we're learning something else about ourselves. What might that be for you?
I think the biggest thing is that you had to overcome the fact that what I'm offering or what we're offering, is unique and different. Oh, this person has enough choices. They can go sign up for that program or that coach or that this or that. I think I let that get in the way a lot in the beginning for me. So knowing that, getting to know and be convinced that, your expression, my expression, our expression is unique in this world in the way we deliver it. It doesn't matter what others do, right? And that comes from, of course, many other ways that we've learned, but that was the biggest learning for me. Hey, I'm good enough, I'm unique, and whatever it takes for me to express who I am with power, because we all give up personal power all day long to many things we think, are serving us and they're not. So I think dissipating that energy is not helpful to you. So if you really believe you want to be a coach and you are going to be the change that you say you want in the world, then I think you have to own up to it. And that, I think, for me is the biggest, we can call ourselves coaches or whatever the world is. People, poo-poo this and poo-poo that. I don't really care. So if I'm convinced that this is something that I can express in my own way to the world, then I stand in that.
That is so good. That is so good, because that is all anybody could ever ask for. And it's an abundant world, over 7 billion people, and we all can use help. And so if you're listening to this, you are doing the work that you're doing because somebody out there needs it. And you're going to attract who you're going to attract because of who you are, not because of who you're copying or who you're duplicating. So be yourself. Don't be afraid to be unique. In fact, celebrate your individuality. Celebrate your own experiences and the wisdom that you've gained from them. And loudly and boldly speak about all that and attract your clients so that you can begin creating the impact that is only yours to create. We love to tell our clients that there's a space they fill only they can fill, and the thing they do that only they can do. And that's really what you're saying here. So thank you for reinforcing that.
And one tip on that is, as I said earlier, I think it's this conversation is also about you qualifying the client. So it's not about you selling, but it's about you deciding whether you want to work with them. So when you use that as a way, that gives you more strength and the feeling of power within you to say, it's okay, this is just a conversation. Whatever the outcome is, I'm going full on. And if I'm truly helping this person, and once I qualify that they're the right person for me to help, then you just go all out. There's nothing to back down from.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, this conversation is near and dear to us because we know that this is one of the key components of creating that impact, is actually being an enrolling whoever you are. You could be a teacher. You could be a businesswoman. You could be, a dad staying at home during these times. But be enrolling in everything that you do, be enthusiastic about it, enjoy it, embrace the challenges, and be the best that you could be in it. And, I think that if we allowed ourselves to enjoy every bit of what it is that we had to do all the time, then we don't really have to do anything anymore. It becomes something that we want to do. So thank you for tuning in today, and we hope that you subscribe, download this episode, maybe forward it to another coach or someone who needs to hear it.
And you can reach us at livemasterminds.com. On Instagram, you can look for Bold Conscious Leaders, because that's our handle, and also on Facebook, Live Masterminds. So we look forward to seeing you somewhere.
Take care.